In April 2019, the attention of the world was drawn to the fire that raged through the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris. In the minds of many, the cathedral symbolized Europe's rich heritage of being a Christian continent. While the majority of Europeans identify themselves as being Christian, for many this is a cultural identity rather than a deeply held religious identity. Factors such as secularism, consumerism, and nationalism often take precedence over a practical, living faith. The Free Methodist Church is trying to change this. Our work on the continent of Europe began in the late 1990s in Greece, Hungary, Portugal, and Spain, and has since expanded to include Belgium, Bulgaria, Denmark, France, Malta, North Macedonia, Russia, Sweden, and Ukraine. Developing work is guided by our 3E vision statement. The Free Methodist Church in Europe equips national leaders to make and multiply disciples as we engage with the gospel of transformation and establish multiplying transformational churches. What does this look like? The first E is equipping. In 2022, a ministry resource team was established to provide assistance in developing pastors, leaders, and churches, and in creating administrative and supervisory policies and procedures. Its initiatives have included holding pastoral formation conferences and leadership summits, participating in training programs with the Church Development Network and Exponential Europe, and codifying a mutually agreed upon set of criteria for various tracks of pastoral ordination.
What's really exciting for me is that the Iranian are here to be with us, and this is the first time they've been able to be involved in a training like this, and it's really good.
In addition to online education, biblical seminaries have been established in Portugal and Spain. The second E is engaging. Staying true to its heritage, the Free Methodist Church in Europe is characterized by its engagement with the poor and marginalized. This includes active work with immigrant and refugee populations, efforts to combat human trafficking by coming alongside those most vulnerable, providing educational opportunities, and responding to the needs of those in crisis, all driven by the love and compassion of Christ. Examples include establishing African European and Iranian European church networks for resourcing and training, assisting the migrant-led church planting initiatives in Scandinavia, ministry at children's orphanages and shelters in Hungary, establishing a safe home and farm in Bulgaria, establishing a learning center in Spain, and ongoing humanitarian assistance in Ukraine. The third E is establishing. The establishment of caring congregations is closely linked to social justice ministries. This is evident in various initiatives such as caring for the elderly men and women in the Houses of Mercy in Ukraine, planting Roma or Gypsy congregations throughout Bulgaria and North Macedonia, engaging Congolese refugees in church planting throughout the Nordic countries, commissioning missionaries from Portugal to establish churches in São Tomé and Príncipe, and developing innovative church groups through the Mosaic Learning Center in Spain and the Eagle's Wing Center in Albania. As we prepare to meet the needs for the future, we are actively identifying and developing new leaders from each country.
My name is Hassam Heravi. I'm from Iran.
This is essential for the long-term health of the movement.
My name is Despina, and I'm from Greece.
Competent and godly teachers and mentors are needed to equip and empower these leaders. We believe the current support system must shift from relying primarily on external resources to developing local support partners. Passionate prayer partners, advocates, and financial supporters, both domestic and international, are essential to sustain this work. Thank you for your support and prayers for Europe.
I have feeling about the God is love always, and yeah, God is love.
Josh, come on up, brother. It's my privilege to introduce to you our friend, our European missionary in Spain, and our European area director. Any other hats you want to wear? Or?
Too much.
Let's give him a round of applause and welcome Josh.
Good morning. Buenos dias. Bom dia. Yes, I've had to learn several languages. I don't speak all of them well, but learn to listen. I tell you, your perspective changes when you live in a continent with so many languages and culture, and it is a privilege to be there. Is this okay? I'm working all right, right? All right. Good to be back. It is good to be with you. Just drove about an hour and a half from Tampa. There a couple of days visiting with my parents. Just some recent news for you to pray for me and my family. My father has just been taken home for home hospice. So this is what we've been dealing with the last week. So yeah, we just need your prayers as we think about decisions that need to be made in the coming days. So, well, I hope this video helps kind of give you that's an update about what we're doing, what's happening in Europe. And more each day, I realize what God is doing and what He's calling us to participate in His work. He's at work. We need to join Him. It is not our work. And so we were reminded that He is doing something extraordinary in Europe in these last years. It's something that we're learning as we go. So how do we deal with all these cultures, the diaspora, the refugee crisis, the gypsies, well, just the nationalism, all these things. So it gives you an idea of what God has been asking us to and inviting us to be a part of. And so I'm just in awe of your partnership, of your involvement in the work for almost 20 years that we've been there. You believe that? I've grayed a bit. I'm catching up to you guys little by little. But it is just wonderful. Besides this report, I really wanted to share something that I've heard even just this morning a few times about this idea about blessing. And this is one of the things, it's a central theme, I think, to what God has been dealing with in my life. And He's saying, you need to tell this story of why we can make a difference. God is wanting to make a change on the continent of Europe. And the only way we know is that when people encounter Him, and the church is actually active, proactive, and being the church. And so I say, okay, well, what does that look like for me? So He took me back to the beginning of the book that we all read, His Word, book of Genesis. And He's saying, every time if we learn, we just need to go back. We don't need to invent anything new. We just need to go back and reread and understand what God is saying for today. His Word was good then, and it is good today. And He's saying, Josh, and people, communicate that you need to be a people of blessing. And I'm like, whoa, okay. What does that actually mean? So it's taking me to think about the history and what are the things that Europe, what needs the Europeans have, right? I mean, we have to first look at that. Okay, let's go back. So I've been studying and just really diving into the fact that I need to know more. I've been there almost 20 years and still more to learn, to grow every day. And so I looked at the background of the spiritual situation of Europe and said, what does it look like today? How do I respond for that? So these are 4 things that I have found that has helped me understand the context, okay? So if you're okay with me, give a little bit of history and kind of a child, I'll mix it up a little bit with different things they're doing, but I think it's important information, and it's a way we can also to say, where's my story in this? And so what we looked at what has shaped European culture has been its history, Christianity, humanism, and enlightenment. And in some way, throughout the the centuries, it has affected almost every country on earth, right? These types, if you think about it, not even going into political issues or immigration and, conquering this and conquering that country or colonizing, but and in some way it has an effect. So let's look at first. The first one I think has helped me say, okay, what is Christianity in Europe? And when you think about Europe, in reality, I mean, it was synonymous. To say Europe, you said Christian. Right? So in many ways, Europe was Christian. And to say what are we talking about when we think about Europe? Some of you have been back there, right? Have you visited in the churches and you see the cathedrals and all that? And you think that's Christianity. That is Europe. The first continent per se to be Christianized and the first to be de-Christianized. That's what I look at in the sense of where they have been, where we have been, and where we are. There's been a gradual decline of religious belief and practice. It has turned into this idea of believing to unbelief. And we know, if we look at the Word of God, that's a dangerous thing to have in your heart, unbelief. It leads you down. But that is a viable option today. You think about Europe, you think about there is no reason for me to believe. There are very bad examples of what is to believe in the church. If you talk about God, you talk about believing in the church, and that's not a very good example today. So slowly but surely, we see this decline, this idea, and this European mindset that we do not need to believe. And that's pretty hard to deal with. When you do that in your neighbors, you do that in your community, it's that idea there is no belief. Along with unbelief, there's despair, depression, loneliness. You follow me? All these things are just part of that. Part of that traditional church, even those who have some sort of belief and some understanding of who God is. Here's another part that I've learned. You can believe without belonging. So please, I can believe, I'll hold to what is true, but it doesn't mean I need to congregate. I need to come together. We know that's an enemy. That's a lie of the enemy, thinking that we're not supposed to, right? We need to come together. God has created us to be in community. And so that's a tough thing. So everything, for everyone, my belief is private. That's a tough one to work with. Living, all my neighbors I don't know of any other Protestant evangelical believer in my whole neighborhood. Our girls, when they grew up, of about 400 kids, there were 4 children that you would say are from believing parents. And so that's a reality. You learn to do that. You learn to navigate through that. But here's something that, to me, I have learned in the last few years. And this is so important for us as believers, I will tell you. To understand the signs of the times. To understand what we live. You know, I've had to, I don't know about you, but since the last couple of months, I've had to snooze a lot of people on Facebook. I didn't unfriend them because I don't know if that could cause them problems. But I just said, I can't hear this. I can't read this. This can't be part of my, my daily life of seeing all these opinions and all this pros and cons, okay? And so even in our own church, you get some extremes. And I'm like, where are we? What is my role? Where do we need to be? We can get distracted in these ways that just creep up on us and we don't know how. And the Lord had just kind of poked at me and just poking us and I don't know if He's poking you. He's saying, do you know where you are? Do you know your role? Do you know your mission? I believe that I'm convinced we're in a kind of a missional shift right now in the world. And either we're going to get on board or we're going to miss it.
And that to me is just so important. I mean, we live where we have to understand that the church is called to shine, to be the salt and light, right? In these days, in these challenging days. We're reminded that we are to call ourselves the people of light, the people of the way, to bear witness to Jesus Christ of what he has done in our lives, his teaching, every nation where he's taken us. Then Paul encourages us to preach the word in season and out of season. Now, don't wait for the time is right. The time is right. The time is now. You know, whatever your context, whatever it is, this is the time. What season are we in? We are it. We are the generation that's called to live life to the fullest and express that to people. You follow me? I've got to be able to be that instrument of God in Europe to say, I see in you hope. But imagine everything around you is despair, depression, loneliness. And I'm like, and God is saying, Josh, straighten up your back. Straighten up. Things are going to happen and it's going to be difficult. You're it. And so I'm like, okay, all right, give me your strength, Lord. Give me an understanding what we're doing. The second thing I said about Christianity, right, what that actually means and belief, and let's think about the European history for a little bit. European history tells us we're shaped that this right of self-determination, to be independent, to defend our heritage. These are some of the reasons why we have had so many wars in Europe and conflicts, and we're living through one right now, and working through our people who are valiantly working in the ground. I was there just in May of last year, and normally it would take about an hour and a half flight to fly to, maybe 4 hours to get to a certain place. It took me 26 hours to get in because you couldn't fly in. You had to take a train to another train, and and then a bus, and then be picked up and driven 3 hours. And by that, I was like, oh Lord, that was just my struggle. Imagine what they're going through every single day. But anyway, people will fight and die for these freedoms, right? I think if we were called to it at one point, we would do the same. We would fight for what we believe. Do we believe? What is leading our belief system, So I think about as Europe today, what do we actually, looking at the history, how do I respond? So history is important. You can't lose sight of what has happened because we learn from the past and it takes us to the future. So I say all this with the understanding that the Lord has said, do you know your history? Do you know who you are and where you've come from? I want to share a little bit about that. A little bit of my history. I grew up in a Christian home that fundamentally shaped how I think, my worldview growing up. And as my late teens, I began to research my family history. I learned that my great-grandparents immigrated from Spain to the Dominican Republic. They came from a place that's about 2 hours south of where I live now in Spain. And my parents were born there. I was born there. So at 18 months, they had this great idea to leave the Caribbean, which is, I don't know if that's a good decision, but you want to do that. And they went to New York. Lived in the Bronx. We lived in New Jersey, Western New York, Rochester, some of you who knows that, Lived there. And then at the age of 15, they moved to Florida. Then they got some wisdom in there, And I'm like, okay, and then Tampa, and it was like, all right, here we are. But no, they just had friends and they moved there. I did some more research, looking about, of course, learning in the past, where they've come, where I'm at. And also found out that I had the Sephardic lineage, Jewish lineage in my heritage. I was intrigued by this and started to research and learn more about and discover the roots. For a time, there I was a part of a Messianic congregation. I don't know if you know what that is. So I worshiped in there and was a believer, but also been drawn to that my heritage, that part of my heritage. Then I met Susie. You've seen her on the prayer card, you know. She's a little about this high. Very strong. And she's like, you need to make a choice. Are you going to be part of that Messianic congregation, or you come to church? And her father, some of you know Gonzalo Cruz, who's still in Tampa, and you know, so I had to make a choice. Yeah, of course, future, you know, wife, and yeah, this is good. This is all compatible, and just be a part of what God wants me to do. And you guys know, men, you know what I'm talking about, right? When your wife kind of just says, "What are you going to do? Are you going to do it, or are you going to do it?" You know, so. After several years, we made that commitment and started learning more about the church and getting involved. And I say that because, you know, it's part of our history and how we grew up. I'm still very much drawn into my history, very much learning about my heritage, thinking of decisions that my forefathers made, right, to get me, that has affected in one way where I am today. They made some difficult choices. Immigrating is not easy. You know, we're dealing with that worldwide. And sometimes you think that's an easy situation. Oh, you know, it's out of sometimes despair, economic suffering, war, whatever that is. May God help us have compassion. Because we don't know where people come from. Yeah, there's some bad people, but don't label everybody. And that, don't make a judgment call of that. Well, I'm just saying people are making hard choices. You know, I met people, refugees from Syria who lived in Greece, and they were very well off, had everything, and had to give it all up for safety, for life. To live in a little tent. They had 2 families living in a tent about half the size of this. I'm like, how do you come from that? How do you adjust with that? But I'm saying those are hard decisions. I want you to understand this is a very difficult time. So part of my history, my ancestry, immigration, the choices that were made has made me the person I am today. And we all can say that. Can look back and say we were reminded that the future will have a history. We're part of the decisions that we make. We're making history. Okay? And what we can ask today is, God, would you lead my path so that you would be honored, glorified in everything I do. So now living in Europe for the last 20 years has helped me see what God has done for me, and what he's doing, asking of me is to love the people and where he has replanted me. In this case, it's like I tell people, to me, it's like God has taken us full circle. You know? And I'm like, only he would have done that. I would have thought that 120 years ago, my great-grandparents would have done this, and here I am back near exactly where it all started. You know? And I'll stop for a moment, and this is my prayer for you. And I said, if he has done that with me, would he be calling the descendants of Europeans to love on that continent like never before? Love on that history, you know? We have to kind of walk away from this idea of nationalism, who we are, and holding up a flag and lower that flag and lower the flag of Jesus in these days of despair. Oh, I tell you, God help us. Okay? God help us understand our role. That it's about this, his kingdom come again and again and again, and through us. So as a representative of God, what am I communicating? Sometimes that people see us for not so much for what we're for, but what we're against. And we are people that are for something, not against something. You understand the difference? And I'm just saying, so it's shaping me to think about, who do they see when they see me? Who am I, Lord? In the middle of the darkness of despair, how am I going to be light? How are you going to be light in the middle of this situation that you have gone through in the last 6 months, right? Ask yourself, how am I going to be light? How am I going to be a blessing? And so this is true for the church today. That sometimes we're seen for what we're against, not what we're for. What we speak about, what we say matters. I've learned that I've got to watch my words with my neighbors. I can't fall into the trap of oh, you know how bad the government, oh, you know the bad decision they've made. Because, I understand that. I'm just, boy, and God gives me those moments. He says, all right, it's a setup. What are you going to say? Yeah, we're living in some tough times, but I'm so thankful God is guiding my steps. And they look at me like, well, it's truth. Can I say it? It can't be private, friends. It's got to be out there. And every opportunity, if not God's going to, you had an opportunity. What'd you do? You stayed quiet. You want to be respectful. Guess what? Jesus is not respectful. Not read it in your word. You'll find out. He's caused trouble. He said, brother's going to get brother against brother. It's going to be family against family. You know, because of me, you're going to be persecuted. You're going to be laughed at. You're going to be ridiculed. And I'm like, I get it, Lord. I get it. So I'm just saying that we learned early part in my ministry. I concluded that I'm not going to persuade anybody. There's so many ideas and that we're going to fight about. And I said, who am I going to be during this time, this phase? I'm going to be the best representative of Jesus I can be. In this time and season, I want people to encounter the living God like I've encountered him. How am I going to be a part of that in Europe? This is the result they need in their life, like I've had it, right? Why would I hold back? They're going to have to forgive me. They're going to say, they're my crazy neighbor. That's okay. So those are the things that I've been wanting to, just as I've been learning, to say, this is what needs to be. This has to be applicable exactly right here in light and life. If it's not, then it isn't the word. Then it's just an idea. But we know that God is saying, even where you are to be a blessing. It started from the beginning, and it will end like that. I will be a blessing. I will become part of that blessing that he has me, where he has me, where he has you. So Genesis, talks about that. He says to Abraham, you will be a blessing to all the nations. Get that? Not just to Israel, not just to his clan, to all the nations. That's us. That's you and me. So there's some biblical reference we can say. And good examples the word will teach us. And I look at this and in Numbers 6, 22, 26 in the NLT. When you talk about Moses and Aaron, right? He sends them out. He says, pray over the people, be with the people. Not only intercede for the people, but they were to pronounce a blessing over them as well. And the Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron and his sons to bless the people of Israel with this special blessing. May the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord smile on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord show you his favor and give you his peace. So the Hebrew sentence in this is very interesting to me because it says, may the Lord show you his favor and give you peace. This is what it means in the Hebrew context. God turning his face toward you. Blessing you, looking at you. Literally, he's coming face to face to you. The God of the universe is looking at you. And he will give you favor. He's going to set you up for greater things. I'm looking at you. I'm like, well, that's intimidating. That's exactly what it means. That not only that you would have peace, you'd have shalom. You know, it's not the absence of hostility, but the expression of his divine presence. You see? Sometimes you say, oh Lord, if you give us peace, I can do that. He can do that with... No. It's not the fact that you would not live in war. It's that you, wherever you walk, things change. That things, the enemy runs because of you, your obedience, and God working. You follow where I'm going here with this? That's what I'm saying to you. I'm just telling you what he's showing us, that if we don't have this attitude in Europe, we're not going to be effective. I can't talk to them about history. I can't talk to them about Christianity, the church. All that is debatable. But they can't argue about my testimony. What God has done. Can't argue with your testimony. You can't. I've done that. I've tried for 20 years, and I'm like, and let me go back and forth. And I said, let me tell you what God has done to me. For me. With me. You know what I get? They shut up. They shut up and they're like, I can't argue with that. I'm like, exactly. That's who we're called to be. Oh man, well, God will help us in this. And so, how can we be a people of blessing, my friends? I would just say that this idea of communicating God's favor, God's prosperity, fruitfulness, God's victories over our lives will just clear the path of the unknowns. Will just kind of set us in motion to understand that He is with us. He set it up. He is with you. He will heal our land, our homes, everything, our park. He will heal it. And it's just, I see this. And so, as an example of this blessing and looking at this, I found this really neat blessing from the Celtic people. The Celtic nations, the history, and they had these basic principles of developing a Christian community, right? Back when Christianity was really, really cool in Europe. You know, it was really the thing. It was amazing. You look at Santa Teresa de Avila or Ignatius Loyola, you look at all those saints and you're like, my goodness, I want to be like that. Can you believe that? Well, that's the way the church was. Oh my goodness, yes, so many out there that I was like, oh God. But here's this, this is where their mantra, this is the idea. They had this understanding that all are welcome. Prayer being at the heart of all things. Simplicity of life. Welcoming hospitality. Healing place. It would be a healing place. People who are quick to forgive. Okay? Not to take offense. Mercy always triumphs over judgment. Leaders who don't care about the credit, but who are digging down deep into their soul so that they may be a servant to all. This was their, as a Celtic nation, as a people who believed in Jesus and in the way he said, this is who we are. I'm like, wow. Can we apply that today? Can we be a people of mercy, quick to forgive? Can we dig deep down to say, this is how I'm going to serve all who come in contact? Can I open my home? Can I be welcoming? That's pretty hard to do in Spain, in Europe. People don't open up their homes. As a kingdom value, as we hold as Free Methodists, this is one of the things I love about our church. And churches who are similar in this is that we want to make a difference. We're going to make a difference. We're going to love people where they are. we're going to tell the truth in love. And so we're going to be the people of God who are into this day are needed to just be truthful, honest, loving, being messengers of God. So let me close with this. This is a lesson about blessing. And I think all of you can say you've been blessed, right? You know, our home got damaged as well in Tampa. We had half the garage, everything's out. So we spent months dealing with. I'm still working on some of those things, but so I'm with you. I know what it means to do that, to where you're going through. But it doesn't take away the fact that whatever we're going through, my question is, how am I going to be a blessing to my neighbors? And even in that situation, God has helped me be light in that, in my community. Friends, this is not complicated. This is where God is calling each one of us as a church to participate. So I want to ask you these questions, and we'll close, and we think about just kind of self-reflection. What is God's primary and unique call on your life to bless others? Unique. You're unique in the way you can be a blessing. And then, secondly, if you know what that is, or you're trying to figure that out, I mean, get on it, right? Time is short. And then, how are you going to respond to it? Act practical ways. You know, we have some ideas sometimes as the Christian church, we have Christian lingo, right? We say things like, oh, I'll pray for you. All this, I'll count on my prayers. You know, there's a lot of things even in greetings in Spain and other parts of Europe. You say hello to people and with a Christian blessing. You depart yourself with a Christian blessing. It's all words. Ir con Dios, paz con Dios. Anyway, the word in Spanish, you know, when you say adios, you know what that means? Go with God. Or you tell somebody as they leave, la paz de Dios, the peace of God goes with you. You know what that means in Spain? Diddly. Because they're just words. What if we turn those words and say, oh my, let me pray for you. I don't even ask permission anymore. I just pray. Speak out loud. I just, Lord, and then you know what I've learned with this? Not only am I called to pray, because sometimes that could be, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to bless you. And I may say, may the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord smile on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord show you his favor and give you his peace. And then in today's context, I could say, so-and-so, can I say something that I have in my heart? May the Lord, I ask that the Lord would come upon you and give you and help you with those issues you're going through. He may show you his favor. That he may just will do what you need. And that you would recognize that he is for you. Would you stand? Would you think about even a person right now and think about who am I called? Not just to pray for, but that I'm going to bless today. Think for a moment. That's hard to do. I find that it's a lot harder to bless somebody than to pray for someone. And I said, well, boy, I'm out of practice. So we can pray, we can intercede, we know the words just pop out. Think for a moment. Think for a minute. Close your eyes and just think about, Lord, bring to me in my heart right now someone who needs to hear these words. You may just have to make a phone call today, or you may have to fix a relationship. You're just going to have to be quick to forgive. Something has to happen. Because your words, our words, can change the course of this person's life. Through the power of the Holy Spirit. So God, I just ask and I thank you for this time, for your presence, the time of worship and listening in your word, and the time that your people have gathered today across the nation, across the world, to glorify you. Oh Lord, remind us today that we are your people and that we are a people of blessing. We ask you to bless this congregation, bless the Light and Life part. Bless the work across where they are touching lives across the world, even in Spain and Europe. They are a blessing to me, to us, and we are thankful. In Jesus' name we pray. God bless you.
God bless you. I want to encourage, I hear keys rattling already. Put them away. Sit down. Yeah, go ahead. I know when we come to this point of the service, it's like, well, time to go. I want you to take a little bit of time before we go to pray in response to the things that Josh has shared with us today. I know there's several of you here today that are praying, asking God for something specific. There's needs. And I want to ask you to take some time before we go to lift up Josh and Susie and the work that they're doing, that God has called them to. It's kind of an intimidating thing, at least I know in the amount of time I've spent in Europe, to stand up and be different. It's a little intimidating because the desire is to want to blend. Isn't that our flesh? Like we want to blend. We don't want to stand out. So as they're doing this work, we've been praying and praying for God to raise up workers for the harvest. I know that's their heart as well. They want to see this work become more national, right? So it's taken place and even resourced through Europe and not dependent on outside sources, but that God would do a work. So pray for Josh and Susie and their work. Josh started off with telling us that his dad is home on hospice. And so we want to pray for him that way. We've dealt with that a lot here. We know what that's like. So you can comfort and bless them during this time. And also, some of the things that Josh said were pretty challenging. And maybe the Holy Spirit is doing a work in you. And maybe he wants you to grab a hold of something that he said. So take this time before we leave to pray. I'm going to ask Carol to come up and the worship team to lead us in our last song. And as they're leading us, the altar is open. If you need to be prayed for and anointed, Josh, I'm going to ask you to come back up so we can pray for you and bless you. And I'm going to ask the elders of the church, and you can decide if that's you or not, stand up and come forward. And we're going to have Mike and Vicky come up, and we're going to pray over Mike and anoint him for healing for the cancer, asking God to put this cancer to bed. And believing that he can do a miracle. So come forward and let's do what the Lord is leading you in your heart to do and bless those who are here.